saying in the Ozarks that says, if you hate the weather today, just stick around till tomorrow. And you know, that's what I think about inspections. Often people go under contract on a home, they're so excited, and then they start getting cold feet, they start getting nervous. And I always say, why don't you just stick around till inspections and let's see how you feel after that. Hi and welcome. I'm Shauna Norris, broker owner of Venture Group Real Estate right here in Neosho, Missouri and Joplin, Missouri. We serve Newton, McDonald, and Jasper counties primarily right here in Southwest Missouri, or as we lovingly call, the Ozarks. The 3 things to know about the inspection period in the Missouri Realtor Residential Sales Contract is property data, inspection period, and resolution period. One of the first protection periods that a buyer has on a residential sales contract here in Missouri is the property data period. And in the property data period, it's usually 5 days unless specified otherwise on the contract. The buyer has an opportunity to review all data about the property. And if they discover something that is undesirable or unfavorable that wasn't already shared, they have the right to unilaterally terminate the contract. What unilaterally terminate the contract means is that the buyer has the sole opportunity to cancel that contract. Also in the Missouri sales contract, the buyer has the inspection protection period. And unless specified otherwise, that's 10 days on a residential sales contract. That gives the buyer opportunity to have any and all inspections that buyer wants. In most cases, all of those are going to be at the buyer's expense and buyer's discretion. Once all of that information and all of those inspections are gathered, the buyer serves an inspection notice to the seller. On that inspection notice, the buyer can ask for things. They can ask for a monetary reduction, a credit, a combination of the two. They can, in most cases, unilaterally cancel the contract, or they can say that they are satisfied with all inspections and continue forward. If they make a request to the seller, then the seller has the opportunity to respond, and that's when that resolution period begins. If the inspection report notes that we need a specialist, maybe a roofer or an HVAC specialist, then you actually have the opportunity to invoke 5 additional days for a specialist report to come out there and figure out just exactly what is needed in those areas. The only way the buyer can unilaterally invoke that period is if the need of the specialist is noted in the inspection period. The notice of that must be served prior to the inspection period being up, and unless noted otherwise, you get an additional 5 days to get that specialist out there. Let's dig into the inspection period. So most often a buyer is going to hire a third-party inspector. It's that inspector's job to find anything and everything wrong with the house. It's important for the buyer to remember that many of those items may have already been factored into the price. Often inspections are to discover new things, not things that were already known or visible to the eye. Once the buyer, you, have gained all of your inspections, then you gather that information and visit with your agent. At that time, you prepare your inspection notice. Again, remember, it's so important to get the inspection notice over during that period. Once the notice is served to the seller, the resolution period starts. That's the 3rd thing we're going to talk about today. So the resolution period is also 10 days unless otherwise noted in the contract. And what that means is you have 10 days, both the buyer and seller, to come to agreeable terms. So there's no, hey seller, you need to respond by this time, and hey buyer, you need to respond by this time. Both parties have to come to a resolution within those 10 days unless otherwise stated in the contract. If the buyer and seller come to agreeable terms within the resolution period, the contract moves forward. If the buyer and seller do not come to agreeable terms during the resolution, then the contract is null and void and the earnest money is returned to the buyer. If you are running out of time, either party can request an extension from the other party, but to get that extension, all parties must agree to extend. So to recap, the buyer has 3 ways to back out during the inspection portion of the contract. The first one is that property data period where they're looking to discover data that they didn't know about that they don't like. In that case, the buyer can unilaterally cancel the contract with the contract stating that the earnest money to be returned to the buyer. The second way is in the inspection period. If the buyer does the inspections and finds those unfavorable, he or she may back out due to inspections unilaterally again, with the earnest money being returned to the buyer. And then the third way is if the resolution period is not met, meaning that the buyer and seller have not agreed upon inspections, and the resolution period runs out, then the contract is null and void, with the earnest money being returned to the buyer. So buyers, there's no sweat off your brow. Take a breather, stick around, like I said, in the Ozarks, and wait and see what the inspection says. Again, I'm Shauna Norris, broker owner of Venture Group Real Estate in Joplin, Missouri and Neosho, Missouri. We serve all of Southwest Missouri, where we lovingly call it the Ozarks. So thank you for your time, and if I've said anything even remotely helpful at all, if you will help me out and hit the subscribe button below. Thank you.